What is up, everyone? Welcome to this process video. Today I'm working on the finished version of this drawing right here, or this rough thumbnail here. I'm trying to make that final version of this and I failed miserably. That's right, you read the title, you know what's up, and that's what I'm getting into. It's actually kind of painful to talk about, but I figured, hey, might as well talk about it because it's making me learn something that I needed to learn, right? So this is a bit of a wake-up call for me. This drawing made me realize that I need to add a digital stage to my drawing, which I alluded to that, maybe needing to do that in the last two drawings, but this drawing is definitely like, okay, this needs to happen. I do not have a choice in the matter because this turned out horrible. All right, so let's get into why it turned out horrible. Number one thing, and it's just the biggest reason is that I moved away from what the rough drawing had put in place, right? So that's the reason to make a rough drawing is to follow its guidelines, right? So if you end up changing too many things from the rough drawing, you should have just made a new rough drawing. And a big reason why I did that is because I couldn't figure out how to make the legs work, right? So the first decision was to take away the fairy wings, the butterfly wings, right? That decision was made to make it more simple, to make it more minimal. But now I'm looking at the image, I'm like, oh, the wings were actually a huge part of what made the image interesting. To have the character have wings and also the butterfly having its wings, you know, the communication there was a big part of what made the thumbnail interesting to begin with. And I took that away, right? That was problem number one. Problem number two, the character isn't leaning back, right? It's not leaning as far back in the final version as it is in the thumbnail, right? So that's problem number two. And problem number three, and I think maybe the biggest one, is that I couldn't figure out how to do the leg, the leg that's behind. So I moved it down, which turned out to just change the entire image. So you might ask, hey Jay, why do a rough drawing if you're not going to use it? Good question. Good question. That's why. So I'm adding a digital stage to this now. Oh my god, it's so painful to talk about, but it's also it's funny when you can be critical of yourself and laugh at your own pain. That is my life right now. So that's kind of what's happening with this image. I still put up the process stuff here so that you can see that I'm failing hard. And in the next drawing, I've added a second rough stage where I take the thumbnail, move it into the digital, right? Take that digital, print that out, and then do the transfer that way so that I can have more of the drawing figured out before I jump into the final version, so I don't end up making this mistake again, because there's nothing worse. There's absolutely nothing worse in making art when the sketch is like 10 times better, 100 times better than the final image. Because the thing is, it is the idea in the rough drawing that's actually the thing that you want to do, right? Like that's the whole point. That's why you're picking some rough images over others, is because you want the best idea. But then if the idea changes while you're working on the final, then you know that might not be a good thing, unless that is part of your process. For some people, that is part of their process. But for me, that's not how I want to work, right? Because it's especially true for like composition and stuff, where it's easier to see it small. Like once you start working on a bigger sheet of paper, it might be difficult to see, my friends, how the image actually looks, because especially if you're working up close. At least on digital, you have your little navigation window that's like a tinier version. But if you're working traditionally, you actually have to step back and look at it, which is difficult to do while you're working on it, right? So that's why this drawing turned out to be a failure. And it doesn't make me a failure, FYI, just reminding myself, because I've been feeling a little bit in the dumpster in the past few days, because this turned out so bad. Worse than I thought it would. And yeah, that's it for this video. If you like this, feel free to follow along by getting on the mailing list over on the website, and I'll be doing a lot more of these types of process videos coming up, and then the next one won't be as much of a failure, hopefully. I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.